Today's guest is someone whose impact on Stamford is both profound and deeply personal. Dr. Maggie Young has spent more than 40 years helping individuals and families navigate recovery, mental health, and life's toughest challenges with compassion, dignity, and unwavering commitment. She serves as Chief Recovery Officer at Liberation Programs, where she leads critical work across treatment, prevention, and recovery support for individuals and families throughout our community. Recently named Stamford's 2026 Citizen of the Year, an honor that has recognized outstanding community service in Stamford for more than 80 years, her work has touched thousands of lives, often quietly, but always meaningfully. Please welcome my guest, Dr. Maggie Young. Hey Stamford is your number one resource for all things local. And if you're tuning into this podcast, I'm guessing the city of Stamford holds a special place in your heart. So if you want to rep the city of Stamford, Hey Stamford, the store is where it's at. We make comfy, stylish hoodies and tees inspired by our city. Perfect for anyone who wants to rep Stamford while keeping it local. Hey Stamford, the store is your go-to for local goods, gifts, apparels, and more. Stop by in person at the Stamford Town Center or shop online at heystamford.com. Your one-stop spot to support local and look great doing it. Really excited to have you here. I want to start with Citizen of the Year because that is such a tremendous recognition. For people that don't know, how they honor the person selected is through an ambush. Basically, that individual is told they're going for a meeting, and then all their friends, families, coworkers are in a conference room. And I was actually lucky enough to be in that conference room on the other side of getting some content. And your reaction to being named Citizen of the Year was one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I was totally surprised. It's not that simple to surprise me.
Yeah.
And I literally, I had no idea when Mayor Simmons said to me, even when I walked in and after everyone was there, I was like, what's happening? Is this a birthday party? What's going on in here? And I'm still thinking to myself, that maybe this is a press release or something. And then when she actually went in and she said to me, congratulations, I mean, that's all I had,
yep.
Right? That was all I had, was just that. I could not believe it. And then when I looked up and I saw the banner with my name on it, it was so emotional and so special. And the only thing I could think about was my mom and my sister, my late mom and my sister.
Yeah.
And shining down on me, and had they been there to just kind of witness that. And just all of my coworkers and friends and, everyone who was around. It was a moment that I'm still really on a high from.
Right.
Yeah.
What did they tell you were going to the office for?
So, yeah, my supervisor said that we had a meeting with the mayor. And I was like, okay, is there anything we need to prepare? Because my mom had always said to me, don't show up not prepared for anything, right? And so he's like, no, she's calling us in. It's her meeting, so we're just going to let, her kind of take the lead. And then I was like, this still doesn't feel right. I still was trying to get information. So I'm calling around. I'm like, listen, is there anything I need to prepare? And so I talked to my supervisor that day as well as the day before. And I was like, John, are you sure that I don't need to prepare anything for this meeting with the mayor? He's like, no, it's her. She'll lead us on, how she wants it to go. I then called Janine Freeman, and I was like, listen, can you confirm that we're on the books, and is there anything that I need to prepare, and what type of meeting this is? And she's like, no, you're not really even on the books. This is not a meeting that's happening. And later on, she called back and she said, "Oh, you are on. So it is the meeting is happening." And then my coworker Joanne had said she was coming with me, and I was like, "But John said it's a prevention meeting, and you're coming?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm just going to come and see what they're talking about." So it was getting weird, and so I showed up with my coworker Ingrid and I get there, and then I say, where's John and Joanne? And
Nothing is adding up at this point.
No. And then they were like, I think it was Lauren who said, oh, maybe they're not here yet. But I'm in the mayor's office now. I'm not even in the room, the community room where we would tip the conference room, right? And then I said, oh my God, it's so nice and bright in here. I love the artwork. I love everything. And Lauren says, it's even brighter in the conference room. But I'm still not, like, it's not registering. Right. And they open the door and and I'm still like in shock over it. It was just amazing. Yeah. Amazing, And, as I see people and they're still congratulating me, and it just feels really, really good to like be acknowledged for that, because it's such a big deal. It really is. It is,
yeah. Once that shock wore off, let's talk about what that does mean to you. I mean, you're getting people recognizing you now and acknowledging it. Yeah. It is a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure that the shock has even worn off yet, because even when I feel like I'm just kind of, I'm at the place and I'm back to my regular day, I run into someone and they say, oh, by the way, I meant to email you, or I saw you on News 12 and congratulations and so well deserved. And I'm like everybody kind of sees this and like, it's really, it's such a big deal. Like, I can't think of any other way to describe it. It is just such a big deal to be recognized, and just so grateful for it. I had no idea it was happening. I had no idea it was being nominated. I know a couple of years back, when my friend Deborah West had said to me, oh, I'm going to nominate you for Citizen of the Year. And I was like, okay, whatever. But then when Mike Dugan told me that he was the one who nominated me, and I was like, and it's exactly what you said, PJ, which is the fact that, how people are seeing me, right? And I just do it because of the fact it's the right thing to do, and somebody did it for me.
Right.
That's the reason for doing it for me.
And I want to talk about all the great things you've been doing with liberation programs and your work there, because that certainly does need to be recognized. I want to start with you as an individual right now. You came to Stamford in 1967.
Yes.
What's kept you in Stamford all these years?
So I came to Stamford from Alabama, right? And I was 11 years old when I came, and it was this whole culture shock. So my mom had moved to Stamford, and she was doing sleep-in work, and she was taking care of kids for a family, and she lived with them. And she then came back a few years later, and she got myself and my two younger brothers. And then a year later, she got my two older sisters and brothers. And this is all I've known is Stamford. And I see people who I've gone to school with, and those who have passed, and those who actually have just kind of, it's been here when I was here, but they continue to kind of move and go places. And I often get questions about, are you going to retire south? Are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? When are you going to? And those, I've not been thinking about that as like the thing that I'm going to do. I think I'll know when I know.
Right.
But I so in that culture shock, I think I fell in love with Stamford, right? And so initially when we came up, and we were living with my mom's best friend on the water side, and I went to Rice School, which was right across the street from where we were living on Selleck Street.
Got it.
And we stayed there, and I think it was really just the fact that each place, each location, each side of town that we lived on, there was this community. And everyone knew everyone on that street or in that area. And that was similar to Alabama, where everyone knew everyone. Mm-hmm. And so in spite of the shock, somehow my mom kind of created this stability, and it was a Stamford stability. And so I've not had the desire nor the thought that, I want to leave Stamford. And as I see my friends and my coworkers and my classmates moving on, I remember someone asked me, "Are you going to ever leave Stamford?" And I said, they're going to need a wheelbarrow to kick me out. I am not leaving Stamford. This is where I'd love to live.
Right.
This is where I am, you know. So, so I've just loved my life here, and you know, I did Stamford dirty, and now I feel like I'm giving back.
Right.
So
I love it. I mean, you've certainly seen the community change over the years. What does the community mean to you here in Stamford?
So, you know, there is, so knowing where everything is means a lot to me, right? And so when the streets started to become one ways, right? So when I remember the first one was Summer Street.
Yep.
When they made Summer Street one way, Caldor was also closing at the same time. And I remember thinking, oh, no, because I'm a creature of habit, right? I like for things just to remain the same. But my commitment to not leaving Stamford was stronger than, oh, no, they're making a change, right? And so even with all of that happening and with Stamford changing, I still love Stamford, and I still get to feel that there's community within Stamford. And as much as there are a lot of people who have moved on, there are a lot of people who I know who are still here as well. There are a lot of, like, you know, Papa's Pizza.
Right.
You know, just kind of like the things that have been here. Curly's Diner, I was there the other day. You know, and so there's the ability to really just kind of go back and still see some of the people who were here when I first got here.
Absolutely.
Stamford High is still here. One of the schools that was my favorite was Burdick. And, you know, a friend of mine lives in that building now that's over there.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and like, so if I go around the back, I'm always thinking about what it was like when we would go out for recess. So the memories are there.
Right.
You know, so, and I get to leave and come back so I can make memories other places, but I just love Stamford.
This is home.
This is home.
Yeah. We always like to say that Stamford is the biggest little city because it's grown tremendously. There's so many new faces here, but we still go into the grade A and still see the same people that we grew up with or their parents or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, during high school, I remember we started to call it Little New York. I don't know why we did that,
Right.
but we started to call it that because it was, you know, it was already starting to grow.
Yeah. Let's talk about your work with liberation programs now. Work like yours doesn't just happen. There's kind of always a story behind it. And you've shared that your work is guided by a personal journey.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, as much as, so my life really was pretty sheltered when, you know, my mom had brought us up and she was working a couple of jobs and, you know, we had some really strict rules, right? And you know, you go to school, you come home, you change your clothes, you have a snack, you go out and play until the street lights come on, make sure you're in, you take your bath, say your prayers, and you go to bed and you do it again the next day, you know? And so we were living, by this point, we're now living on Clinton Avenue. And there, right in that area it was drug infested, but it still, again, my home always felt like home. Mm-hmm. So even though I had to walk through the street to get to the staircase to where it was that it felt like home, there was still, you know, in that area it was drug infested. And so my mom would say to us, you know, you never want to, and you know, you never want to be a person who's actually standing out on the street and you're drinking. And my brothers and I would like laugh about these people who were standing up sleeping. And I remember having that thought and us laughing about it, and we just kind of went on, right? And we had seen this also on the South End. And, you know, I would look out the windows and I would see it, and I was just like, how is it that a person stands and sleeps? And I later found out that that was drug use, right? And that was drug addiction and the whole bit. But I also knew what my mom had said, right? The thing that you want to stay away from is drugs and alcohol. And so I did that throughout school. I didn't, you know, I wasn't a kid who cut classes and smoked and drank and did any of that throughout school. And my sister graduated. I had a first drink, didn't like it. A second drink at my graduation. I went away to college, and that's where everything took off. Was that, you know, there was access. I was introduced to drugs and alcohol. And, you know, graduated college, came back home. Throughout my college years, I was, you know, using drugs. came back home, and again, at home, I was more comfortable to be able to kind of find the people who were doing the things that I was now doing. And, I became addicted to drugs. I started to get arrested. I, started to really just go in, and I was like stealing things. And so then I was like, it was back and forth, like to like, prison, jail, and all of it was associated with addiction. And there was like a public defender and a judge who actually dared me to really, to get better, right? And I had been offered treatment each time that I'd gotten arrested. And I was like, I'm not doing that, and I don't know what the switch was that happened. And, but I do know that one of the things is that I didn't want to have to take the long trip from Niantic back to Stamford anymore. I was tired of the trip, but I didn't have any thought that, I think I should get sober. I think I should try to change my life. And my sister was a big part of it because she was in recovery 5 years and she was working at liberation programs. And so she kept trying to get me to come in and go into treatment, and it just wasn't sticking for me.
Right.
And so this particular time I called her up and I said to her, can you make an appointment for me? I'm ready to go into treatment. And she said, no, make it yourself because you're not ever following through when I make appointments for you. And so I went back I was living with this guy, and I said to him, I'm going to go into treatment. And he's like, you're not going to do anything. And it was that dare, because he was the only one who was still left who actually was not challenging me on what it was that I deserved in my life. So there was this dare, and it was that dare that got me into treatment. And so I went into treatment at Liberation Programs. It was co-ed at the time, February 6, 1992. In spite of the fact that I hated everything about it, I spent 7 months in treatment there. And from there, I had to go to prison because I had violations on me for parole and probation. But it was while I was in treatment that this counselor said to me that I should do some work so that someone understands what I had gone through. And it wasn't like it was like, oh, okay, that's what I'm going to do at that moment. But it was later on, and I think it was a time when I was sitting up in prison one of those times, and I was like, I have to do something with my life. And, the decision was kind of made for me, and I started to work. I was working at a hotel in Stamford, and my sister called me up, who's still working for Liberation, right? And she says to me, she said, Maggie, there is a new program that's opening in Stamford, and it's at St. Luke's at the time, the Inspirica building. She said, and it's for women and children. And the only thought I'd had about what I wanted to do was the fact that, I wanted to work with women, but I also wanted to work with children. When she told me this, I was like, oh, wait, this is an opportunity to do both at the same time. And I applied, and I got hired, and I just remember like thinking to myself, like, this might be what I'm gonna do. This might be what I'm gonna do. And then my first experience with one of the women in that program was really something that really kind of sparked my interest in going back to school, and that was a young lady said to me, thank you for talking to me, she said, because I've never really talked to anyone who I felt like understood what I was saying.
Wow.
And it was that moment that I kind of decided, and I went back to school and started to do it, and it's over 30 years now that I've been doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, you're Chief Recovery Officer at Liberation Programs.
Yes.
Went from going there yourself to this position now.
Yes.
What a journey.
Yes.
For people that may not be familiar, what does Liberation Programs do?
Yeah, so Liberation Programs is a behavioral health agency. We have offices from Greenwich to Bridgeport, and we provide care, co-occurring services for substance use and mental health disorders. We have 2 inpatient programs, one for men, 64-bed men in Stamford, right downtown Stamford next to UConn. And then we have a 10-bed inpatient for pregnant and parenting women with their children. We also have outpatient. We have medication-assisted programs where a person could come for Suboxone, Vivitrol, or methadone. And we have intensive outpatient. And then we have a prevention department, which really is within the schools. And we do prevention and education information in there. And then there's harm reduction, which is also just really looking at outreach, where we are, you might see the van around, like, the tie-dye van. Yeah, and so we have that department. So that is, Liberation really kind of covers all of the behavioral health, substance use kind of needs from like youth through older adults.
And in Stamford, you said it's the men's program is here in Stamford.
Men's program is right there on Main Street, 64-bed for men. And the men might come, half of them might come from the criminal justice system, and the other half might be self-referred, family referred, individual referred. So they may come in any kind of way. And we are always at capacity.
Always. Wow.
Yes.
So now you said you worked across prevention, inpatient, outpatient, long-term recovery. What have you learned about what actually works in behavioral health and recovery? I think that's a loaded question.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things. I think one of the most important is the fact that, it is really important to be person first and person centered, right? Because the description that I just gave you about the lady who talked with me, if I can't connect with the person on a human level first, pushing through the fact that they may have come into the treatment facility, into an office, and they may be reeking of alcohol, and they may still be reeling from whatever they used, an hour ago, 5 minutes ago, the night before. But I really need to give them some eye contact, and I really need to make sure that they know that I'm listening to whatever it is that they need to say. And there needs to be a connection to what they want. Like, what do you feel like is going to help you as opposed to my agenda? And that's across the board. And that's been, ever since I've been doing this, it's really about that first connection. And the person shows up and they're already showing up. When they show up, they're saying to you, help me. And now I just need to find out from them, how would you like for me to help you? As opposed to, this is how I think I should help you. And I think that's really it. Once you get there, they're going to still make their decisions. People have smart feet and they decide for themselves what is smart for them at that moment. But I think first we have to really do the human connection.
I think I read a term on the website of meeting people where they are.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's my supervisor's favorite thing, meeting people where they are. There's a second part to that, to help them get to where they want to be. And that's often just kind of dropped.
You provide service regardless of someone's ability to pay.
Yes.
Which I also think is important. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And, and this is a catch-22 because there's the access to care, right? And one of the things that at Liberation that we pride ourselves on is not turning anyone away, right? And we know that there's the underinsured, there's the uninsured, there's that whole piece of it. And addiction has no respect of person. So addiction doesn't hit a family or an individual based on whether they have insurance or don't have insurance, right?
Right.
And that moment of window of opportunity happens when it happens. So when that person shows up to us looking for care, if we're not able to do that at that moment, right? The minute they walk back outside, someone is going to offer them something and they're off to the races. And so now that's the potential for death, right?
Yep.
Overdose, or not coming back. And so the access, it also is the fact that when it comes down to the insurance, and when we look at public insurance and how many times a person can't enter treatment if they need to, there's nothing that says that the third time is going to be the time that they get it, right?
Right.
But if a person goes into care and they need to go back in less than 30 days, there's a challenge at that point. we need to work harder to really make sure that we are providing enough information to the insurance company to say to them that they deserve to go back in if they need to go back in. And oftentimes Liberation ends up needing to foot that because of the fact that the insurance won't pay because they are saying that, no, they were already in treatment in less than 30 days, for example. Mm-hmm. And so, there are grants that come through, like the mayor's office. We're always looking for funds to really just support so that for that individual who is uninsured or underinsured, right, that really is the access or lack of access. And so we have to really find ways to really bridge that so that we can say yes to everyone coming in. But it still is a challenge.
One thing that stood out for me also is the Families in Recovery program. Can you tell us how this program came to life?
Yeah, so Families in Recovery is my baby. Everybody knows that. Like, this is my and so that was the program where I told you where my sister called me up and said they're opening this new program, right? And at the time, the late Tom Kirk was the CEO at Liberation Programs, and it was really his vision. And he wanted to create a program in Lower Fairfield County for women where they can bring their children so that it eliminated them needing to actually place their kids in DCF care and make a decision whether they go into treatment or not. Mm-hmm. We know that women are the glue of the family. And so they're the last ones to get into treatment, right? Hence, 10 beds for women, 64 beds for men. Mm. So when you look at this state, like that's pretty much how it's kind of, leveled. There's only about 62 beds that are for like just gender specific, just for women and their children. Mm. And so he wanted to create a treatment program for women with their children, and he wanted there to be wraparound services. And so it initially was opened up at St. Luke's, right, in Spirit Canal. And there were wraparound services there. And everything that a woman who came into treatment at the Families in Recovery program was in that building. And so there was child care that was within the building where the women their children would come and they would go downstairs to daycare while they were upstairs getting their treatment, their clinical treatment. And so that whole part of it was really huge in the sense that the women actually, they could go down and they could also utilize, and Spirica had a training program downstairs where they could go down and they could actually, engage in that. So it was 1994. Our first bed was filled August 8th of 1994 with a mom and her son who I'm still in touch with. There's another family who was there. Her kids are all grown. She owns a home in Virginia. She's doing great. I'm still in contact with her. And so it's those types of things that really mean something because you just kind of get to see your work happen there. And so the program opened. We were there. We had 6 weeks of training, and all of that training was really community partners. So Stamford Hospital came in and they trained us on, because at the time they had a hub where WIC would come in and then they had DSS would come in. And so the women would go there one time a week and get all of their documents taken care of right on campus at Stamford Hospital. And so we had those types of trainings that were happening. And then we had St. Luke's did their training. And so everyone came in and did that. And so we were in training and we opened up and we're still alive and kicking.
I want to talk about the moment where you realize this is really what I want to do. This really means something to me and this is what I want to do.
So I was in treatment, right, at Lib House, co-ed, and I was in a women's group. And so there was, this counselor was actually, and we were talking about women in trauma. And she was talking about the fact that she was, and it's so interesting because her name was Sue Coleman, and that whole Coleman program that's about that they do every year. I often wonder if it's the same Sue Coleman. But so it was Sue Coleman, and she was my counselor, and she was doing this women's group, and she was so kind. And I just remember we were doing the group, and she said, the reason why I do this is because of the fact that there's going to be either my daughter, someone else's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mom, who is going to need to know all of this and to know that it's okay to be hurt. It's okay to walk through the hurt. It's okay to be afraid. And she went through all of these feelings, and she said, but this is why I do it, because right here, right now, and I remember it was like 8 of us in there. She said, right here, right now, I have the opportunity to share with you what has happened in my life. And I was like, oh, I want to be like Sue. And that was what stuck for me. That was what, that was the moment.
Right.
That was like, oh, I want to do the same thing that she's doing.
Wow. And 30 years later.
Yep. Yeah. 30 years later, I feel like I do her a little bit justice.
Right.
If not fully, but
I would say fully. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like sitting with someone and having someone say, I feel like that you really have heard what I just said to you. I'm not a fixer. I don't, I can't fix anything for anyone, but a moment for them to be able to just share anything, and I'm available and present for them. Right. Does it for me.
Right. Wow. You've been on the forefront of addiction, recovery, behavioral health for 30 years. Mm-hmm. How have you seen it change over the years here in Stamford specifically?
One of the things is the fact that we have definitely started to highlight the prevention side, where we're looking at how do we prevent someone needing our treatment. So that definitely is one of the things that I think is definitely a positive change. I think that we have pushed through the fear of talking about what's really happening, mm-hmm. because it is real, and I think that we're actually talking about it so that we can identify the problem and then try to address the problem. I think when it comes to really looking at the community as a whole, I think a lot of drug use and addiction has gone inside the house. Simply meaning that, whereas you would typically see these big groups of people just really using drugs on the streets outside, that right. people have kind of
congregating on the streets.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And I think that there's great attention being paid to what is happening all over the world, where the changes and the trends in different drugs, and I think that Stamford is really, as it comes up, I think we're looking at ways to really see what can we do? Mm-hmm. How can we have a healthy community? How can we take care of one another? Where do we want to put our resources to make sure that, everyone, I think access is always going to be the center, right? And I think that it's also important that, that here in Stamford, I think we're starting to not look at the highlighted group that already are identified as having a problem, but we're looking at the possibilities of those who potentially have a problem and have not said it yet because they don't have the courage to say it yet. Hence the going into the schools. Right. Into the faith-based communities. In areas where there's all of this silence. and just reminding people that, like, you know, we are here to help. You know, just even looking at the saturation of like Narcan, getting that out there for everyone, and hopefully pushing through for people to understand that us offering you Narcan to have is not us saying to you that you're addicted to something. It's that you never know who your company is, who might be there, and who you might need it for. So it's really just trying to do that, you know, the same way that for years, I think in the schools, there was this myth that if we were giving students condoms, we were giving permission to have sex.
Right.
I think it's that same thought about Narcan. And it's just not true. Like, we just want people to be able to save a life if they can.
Right.
So I think it's, you know, I think we're kind of opening our eyes a little bit.
Yeah. Is there something the community can do, a first step, just something that the community do to help?
So, yeah, always. And I think the first thing is, you know, whatever groups, whether that's the family group, the friend group, the community group, the basketball team, the football team, the whomever, I think is really just saying, find a way to make sure that whether it's liberation programs or some of the other providers around, find a way to bring the information in and make sure that everyone is ready to respond. It's similar to, you know, COVID hit us, we weren't ready to respond to that, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
We know addiction is here,
Yep.
right? We know that there are things being laced. We know that it's available. So access for the substances is there, right? And it's huge. But when we start looking for access to services, it's just the other end of the spectrum. So I think if we could prepare ourselves just with education and information, I think we could potentially prevent and have a healthier community and continue to just kind of save lives.
Right.
And I think we've started, but I think we could do more of that.
Youth prevention is a big part of that.
Yes.
We actually went to a program at our kids' schools, which I thought was a great educational opportunity. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, starting at that youth level is just so important.
Right. And, you know, we what we kind of, through our prevention side of it, what we do is we say talk early and talk often. That's what we look at, right? And so any opportunity that we get, we're in some of the elementary schools around, but again, right, the challenge is that we have to be invited in, right? We can't request a meeting. And we understand that because the academic schedule is so tight that we don't want to interfere with any of that. But at the same time, when we want to be able to really make sure that the information gets out. There still is the challenge with parents getting to, when we actually plan an event, right? Mm-hmm. The challenge of getting the parent and caregivers out to get the information.
Right.
So, we know that people are working one or two jobs sometimes, and we try to make sure we always have like a meal there, and we look to have childcare. That's another way that I think that, in the community we can actually help with, is make sure that we're able to like have, childcare no matter what it is that we are actually, doing. And it's really education. Like, I think that that's what's going to help to prevent, because the more a person know, the better the chance of them actually responding to something as it comes up. And so we're in the schools. I have a counselor in Greenwich High School. In Stamford, what we do is anytime someone requests something on trends of coming in, we're right there in the school ready to do that. Mm-hmm. There's a diversionary program with the Stamford Police Department, with Domus Kids, with the school, and we are part of that. There's the diversionary program, which is actually through Liberation's outreach. And so we're doing things, and we're all connecting. the Youth Mental Health Alliance, right, which is where we're looking at mental health and looking at how our kids are doing, in the community. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but I think that we just have to keep pushing.
Right.
Because we're still, no matter how you look at it, to me, it still looks like that we're tapping into the group that we've already identified as needing the problem. And again, that goes back to me saying, right, that I feel like that the use, abuse, and addiction has gone inside. And it's happening in homes, right? And we'll never know what those numbers are because it's happening in homes.
Right.
So I think we just have to keep pushing.
That conversation, that education just has to get stronger and stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're going to wrap up in a few moments. I want to talk about you a little bit, though.
Okay.
You're very passionate about what you do at work. Mm-hmm. I assume that could get a little heavy at times. Mm-hmm. What brings you joy?
So I have a grandbaby who's going to be 1 year old on the 23rd of this month. And so she brings me joy. I love a good nap, right?
Me too.
I also, I enjoy line dancing. I take a sewing class, right? And my family, just being with my family. Being with my family brings me joy. I enjoy, all of my events that I do that are just mine. I love to travel. I have a group of friends that I travel with. And then like I'm also a member of Sober Support. So there are a lot of things. I have a lot of friends who actually are in recovery, and we do recovery events. And so I like people.
Right.
I like people and I like things. And at the same time, I also love a quiet moment. So, I do what I need to do when it's time to do that. And then when I don't want to be bothered, I want that moment to be mine where I don't want to be bothered.
So important, that quiet moment.
Yeah.
But you don't get that with the 1 year old grandbaby, though.
Yeah, no, but she doesn't live with me, so that's a good thing. So they, I get to kind of have her and then send her home. So it's great.
I love it. That's the best.
Yeah.
I want to go back to being named Citizen of the Year.
Okay.
Let's talk about, real quick, what that recognition means to you.
I'm not really sure that it really has settled fully yet with me. Like, I really am not, right? And everyone who says to me, congratulations, you're like, that's such a big deal. And then when I was saying to you, right, PJ, about like you're talking 80 years, you're talking about Citizen of the Year. We're talking about like the entire Stamford.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so I don't know. I don't know if I have the words for it. I really don't. And I am still on cloud nine around it. I really am. Like, I just, and it's like, I'm like, little old me? Like, really? Like, it's just, it's a little too much for me to kind of like really wrap my head around because like, I don't know. And, maybe it'll sink in a little bit better as we start. Like, I know that we have the plaque unveiling coming up in May, and then, the award ceremony in June. And so maybe, I don't know when it's going to settle, but I'm just still pretty much in shock. I really am. So grateful, though. So very grateful because, and I think about it and I'm like, oh, that's how people see me.
Right. When you reflect on your career, what are you most proud of?
I'm going to say my recovery because I'm 34 years in recovery as of February, and my recovery drove my career. So it was really getting into recovery at Lib House, meeting Sue Coleman, sitting in that group, making that made the decision for me. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what started my career. And so it really is, my recovery is one of the things that is really most near and dear to me because while I was actually using drugs, I didn't think for a moment that I would get better. But I was so ashamed of it all the time because I never thought that I would be a person who would be addicted. Like there was nothing, no signs that said, oh, she's headed down the wrong path, you know? And then there I was. So, yeah, I think my recovery and going back to school and getting, you know, at like over 60, I started to go back to school, right? And then my master's and then my doctorate and doing that, you know, and there was that, you know, and then the one other thing that I haven't mentioned yet that is really important is that, you know, in 2021, I was inducted into the Connecticut Hall of Change, which is really, you know, I had been back and forth to prison, right?
Yep.
And a whole bit. And so that really is an award that says that you did that and you've been justice impacted. But this award is really about, since you've been out, what you're doing in the community.
Wow.
And so, you know, we have Her Time, which is a shoot-off of Hang Time, which is a social justice agency. And we have one in Stamford, and we had a launch, right? And we had the mayor's office come down to just support us on that. And so I'm really proud of that, because that's another area which is really just supports of women and resource hub. Mm-hmm. But just kind of get, you know, that's one of my sweet spots too. You know, so there's like the Women and Children program, and then there's that.
Yeah. And
but my recovery still sits at the top of that.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
And then, of course, my grandbaby.
Right.
And my daughter, you know. Love you, Teal. But yeah, so but yeah, it's those things, and somehow those things just kind of keep choosing me. Like I'm not going out looking for one more thing to do.
Right.
You know, it's just that it shows up, and before you know it, I'm like in it somehow. You know,
yeah.
So I think they kind of choose me.
Well, congrats on that recognition. Also, the Hall of Change, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Now, I want to end on this because I think it's really important, but for anyone listening today that may be struggling or going through a difficult time, what would you want them to hear right now?
Great question. So I would say that I would want that person to hear that they are worth the change. And when the thought comes up that you can do it, don't dismiss it. And find a person, and just share with them that you're ready.
So important.
Yeah.
That first step.
Yeah, it's really about just finding a person, because the isolation of that feeling and that thought that, you know, I want to, but I'm not really sure where to go or what to go, you know. And I would just say, show up at any of our programs. There are a lot of programs around in Stamford, and just show up and just say to someone, I don't know what to do. And I believe, based on my colleagues and all of the partners around, no matter who that person says that to, that someone is going to reach their hand out. I believe that, because that's what Stamford is.
Right.
And that's what Stamford represents.
Where can people learn more about Liberation Programs?
So we are www.liberationprograms.org. We have an office at the Greenwich YMCA. We have an office on 15 Commerce Road. That's our outpatient and intensive outpatient services. Our inpatient program is at 119 Main Street in Stamford. And we have also programs in Bridgeport, and in Norwalk. Our program for pregnant and parenting women with children is on 4 Elmcrest Terrace. Bridgeport has all of the outpatient, the harm reduction, the intensive outpatient, and the MAT programs. And there's a match for that on Commerce Road in Stamford.
Wonderful. Now, before we wrap, I want to mention Dr. Young will be honored at this year's Citizen of the Year celebration. For over 80 years, City of Stamford has recognized residents for their service to the community through this program, sponsored by the Fred Robbins Post-142 Jewish War Veterans of the United States. This event also honors students and veterans, and this year's ceremony will take place June 2nd at Sarah Fresca at the IC. For tickets and more information, we'll include that link below. Maggie, congratulations. Thank you again for joining us on the podcast. It's truly been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Come on out and celebrate with us.
It's going to be a great time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.